My father abused me when he was under the influence of alcoholism. And my mom tried to get closer to him and he tried twisting her arm. He twisted our arms, he choked us, did a bunch of not nice things, basically. I always defend myself, and the way I did it this time was a little different. I grabbed a knife this time, and I threatened him, and I said I would kill him if he kept touching me and my sisters the way he did. But then I stopped and thought about it, and I asked myself, is he really worth my time? It makes me feel really unsafe because I don't know how far he'll go this time. I'm scared on what he can do to my sister, my mom, me. I just don't want to be in that situation and just end up in the hospital one day. I think this started ever since I was a kid. I just never realized it. Because obviously when you're a kid, you're so oblivious to things that are going around you. You're gullible, you're happy, but when you start getting older, you notice the stuff, you notice the bruising, you notice the marks. So I think it's been going on since I was a kid.
Ava's story led us to learn more about abuse. We came to the conclusion that abuse can happen anywhere.
He drank. He tried to get rid of him.
Sorry. You don't have to if you don't feel comfortable.
Trying to get rid of his aggression, and he did it through alcohol. His alcohol turned into a bigger problem. You know, he started drinking more, and he started taking it out on us. It can affect you long term, and it can make you function certain ways, and it can make you not trust people. It can give you certain issues in life. But to affect you, is it going to affect you getting a job? Absolutely not, unless you let it. Is it going to affect you growing in life? No, it should absolutely make you stronger. I don't feel like it should keep you down.
He, would tell me stories on how bad they beat him, how bad my grandfather beat him, how bad my grandmother hit him. But it's not like he hates them for it either. Obviously, that's his parents, so he's going to be like, it's in the past, it's fine. Look at how I am now.
There are many long-term effects of traumatic stress stemming from child abuse. Many children who are traumatized are at greater risk for anxiety, for depression, for having a hard time managing their anger.
They may learn not to develop healthy relationships, not to learn healthy and appropriate attachments.
Children who experience abuse find it difficult to develop healthy relationships as adults. In addition, they are more likely to have low self-esteem, deal with excessive fear and anxiety, and act out aggressively towards their peers.
It also affects your ability to focus and to remember and to learn.
If a child is abused at a young age, it can dramatically affect the development of the cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for memory, attention, thinking, and language.
You could see what the brain of a traumatized or neglected child versus a typically developing child looks like. Some of the key structures of the brain actually have a different size. We have a stress mechanism built in, right? It's often called the fight, flight, freeze response, where the brain sends out a warning signal to say there's danger here. When the danger is happening, we're in survival mode. When the danger goes away, the alarm system shuts off, the survival chemicals stop doing their work, and we go back to normal functioning. Post-traumatic stress is what happens when that response system becomes the norm. That means that the biological response system, the survival chemicals in the brain, cortisol and adrenaline, are coursing throughout our bodies much more than they're supposed to, and that can lead to medical problems as well.
Many studies have shown that children who are abused or neglected are at higher risk for heart, lung, and liver diseases, obesity, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, anxiety, smoking, alcoholism, and drug abuse.
Aside from the effects that it could have on oneself, abuse can also affect one's offspring.
So there are many studies that show that adults who have experienced abuse themselves as children are more likely to abuse their own children.
So they're more likely to repeat the same parenting patterns that they had before if they haven't had any type of intervention.
Do you think that a parent hitting their kids is abuse or discipline?
Discipline.
Obviously, if they deserve to be hit, I would hit them.
And I'm going to slap him so he knows I slapped him. I'm not going to tap him. I'm going to slap him. Yeah, so you know you did something wrong.
Okay, so as a parent, do you think that parents hitting their children is an effective form of discipline?
It is not. It is not, because it just helps them learn how to use aggression to solve their problems.
The data is overwhelmingly convincing that physical punishment, corporal punishment, not only is not effective at changing behavior, but can often make behavior worse.
I don't think anywhere in this house I'd be okay to just hide. I would just want to leave, run to the park, run anywhere but here.
Ava can't avoid the abuse at home, so in order to move on, she set up a plan that would help her get out of the house.
The main thing I really want is to get a job, save some money, and leave. I don't want to live like this. I don't want to live in fear where one day I come home and my mom's neck is broken. Hands. Those are her hands. Is this? It's Quack Quack. Yep, she's my niece.
How often do you take care of her?
Every day, actually, because on Mondays when I don't have my internship, I always have to come home, take care of her, change her diaper, do things my little sister can't do.
Let's start with our
Thomas?
latest surprise.
Where's Thomas?
Play-Dohs?
Play-Doh. I was pregnant once. I got rid of it because I was too young. I didn't want to be one of those pregnant moms being a teenager, so I got rid of mine. And Jenny was just a year older than me, and she had hers. So she made the choice of making Maya live. That's why I act like a mother to her. Because sometimes I wish I didn't do what I did. You are so conceited, I swear. You didn't hear her? She just said picture and she started smiling. You're so conceited. Look at her, look at you. No, she hasn't been present for anything that has happened because she's been asleep. She's, since it's late at night, she's usually asleep. We put her to bed early. So she hasn't realized any of those. She hasn't witnessed it. And I'm more scared of her getting older and she does witness stuff like that.
Have you thought about what would happen when you move?
Yeah, I thought about it a lot. Meaning I wouldn't be... That's loud. I wouldn't be here all the time anymore. I wouldn't be able to take care of her, and she'll basically be with my little sister. I always worry about her, no matter where I am. Because I don't know if one day he might actually raise his hands on her. Even if it's accidental or anything, it doesn't matter, he still did it. And I'd be scared for her. Who wouldn't be?
I worked for a long time with early intervention children, and there's a lot that happens. That's a very critical time in a child's life where they're learning developmental milestones like attachment. They're learning how to cope with stress. And so when a child experiences abuse during that age range, it affects them, in terms of their way of learning. It affects the way they connect with relationships and the way that they play. And it does have sort of a lasting effect in terms of their also well-being psychologically as well.
If she lives here long enough, she'll start seeing what I see. She'll start noticing the tendencies, she'll start noticing the violence, and she's not going to feel safe anymore.
Even if the child themselves is not the victim of physical abuse directly, there's still a very serious negative emotional impact that can happen. These children often live in a constant state of fear. They don't know when it may happen to them. They may be worried about their family members who are being physically harmed, and they may have a strong sense of guilt of being the one that it's not happening to.
And also wanting to help the person being abused and not feeling like they have the power to do that is going to, affect them socially, emotionally.
Obviously, it's selfish of me to just say I might as well move out because of me, because I need it. But what if something would happen to her?
Unlike Ava, Maya is too young to move out, so how can she be helped?
I think Administration for Children's Services is an organization that's been established to do well. And at the same time, they're an organization that's extremely overpopulated with cases and whose caseworkers have extreme caseloads. And so they're not able to put careful detail to the cases that they're assigned. But I think generally speaking, they're an organization that means well.
I'm worried about it because if ACS gets involved, I know most likely they say they will keep it confidential. They would keep it secret and try and help me, but I don't. If it gets to the point where cops need to be involved, my parents will be taken away.
ACS there are people who come into families and destroy families. Bottom line.
We try to identify what are the behaviors that need to change, and we try to link families to services that will directly address those issues and support them. We always try to use removal as a last resort, so hopefully we can come up with a plan that doesn't involve a child being removed.
I was taken away from my family, and I was brought around people that were all taken away from their families, and they were brought into bad environments, and that turned me into a more aggressive, angry person.
You have people who have maybe their last experience with us was 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 20 years ago and may not really had an opportunity to find out that this is a different agency today and we're not running to scoop up people's kids. And even like I know I mentioned the data before, if you look at the number of children receiving preventive services versus the number of children in foster care, it's far more kids getting preventive because really that's our goal, to keep families safely at home. Several years ago, if you go back a decade or two, the numbers were probably inverted.
We spoke over Skype with David Tobis, former executive director of the Child Welfare Fund and founder of the Fund for Social Change.
ACS is not taking as many children and placing them in foster care as they used to. Back in the early 1990s, there were 13,000 children placed in foster care every year. It's much less than that now. And the work that we did and the organizations that we supported led to a tremendous reduction of the kids in foster care from about 50,000 in care in 1992 to fewer than 9,000 in care now. And it's an extraordinary change and improvement so that children will not have to be taken from their families but helped at home. One of the problems is that not enough help was provided to families, but still the kids were not taken and put into foster care.
There's a lot of different perceptions in the community about what it is that we do, so it's like you have to get past that hurdle to really be able to help families.
His death sparked outrage across the city. A 6-year-old Harlem boy allegedly killed by his mother's boyfriend.
The city's Administration for Children's Services received 5 abuse complaints, but no action was ever taken. The head of the Administration for Children's Services in New York City suddenly resigned today.
Carrion has served in the position the last 3 years. Her resignation comes after 2 recent high-profile ACS cases.
You know, I think ACS is the whipping boy for society's problems. There are not adequate supports to help children and families. The caseloads have been too high. There hasn't been adequate supervision. There was slip-ups in those cases.
You know, I remember situations where there were horrendous things happening for certain individuals where ACS really were heroic and were able to stabilize families and provide really great supports. But we often don't think about those situations. We think about the cases that have been in the media and ways in which ACS didn't do the right thing.
Most other societies, industrial societies, have family supports that are preventive, that help families before there's crisis. We don't have that kind of a system in this country. We're one of the most backward countries in the child welfare system of any industrialized country in the world. Until we solve the housing crisis, until we solve the poverty crisis, you're going to have these kinds of deaths, and you're going to have commissioners being fired and blamed for society's problems.
I think I'm safer now if I just leave the house and not think about it anymore, not worry about it. I think I'll be fine, even though she might be in danger too. If he just didn't have those violent tendencies, I think she'd be safer.
It's one of the hardest parts of my job, but when there is information from many sources that a child might be in an abusive setting, as a school, we're called mandated reporters. We are responsible for calling in potential abuse cases and getting help for the family and for the student.
The staff at EVC are mandated reporters, so the organization contacted ACS in order to ensure Maya's safety.
As a crew, we shared our own experiences growing up with child abuse and decided to talk to our parents about their experiences too.
The time that I spent with my dad as a child, he never laid his hands on me. He yelled at me and stuff like that. But now, he still doesn't hit me, and he doesn't yell at me at all. And I think that's because him and I have an actual relationship. We have I wouldn't call it a friendship, but it kind of is. If I'm gonna have a kid and if I'm gonna raise him, I'm definitely gonna raise him exactly like how my dad raised me.
I love him. I respect that he is my father, but I do not recognize him as a father.
I don't know how you feel, but if your father ever hurts you and because he's on some type of medication or drug or alcohol, it doesn't mean that he doesn't really care about you. It means that his mind's altered. He was always there for me. Through really shitty times in life, my dad was there for me. That's crazy. I can even talk about this. Never talked to anyone like that. All right. So next question.
So you've never sought professional help?
Sought professional help? No. God, no. I didn't think I need it.
It really depends on whether or not the child receives treatment and whether or not the child is able to then later establish healthy relationships. Will that child be able to establish great relationships with an adult that's able to teach them how to appropriately manage that stress? Then it won't be something that sort of negatively impacts them. But the trauma is sort of there to stay. It's part of who they are.
The brain can change as a result of negative events, but it can also change as a result of positive events. So even people who have been impacted by child abuse and have negative outcomes, if they get the right interventions, there is evidence to show that their functioning can improve and their brains can also adapt to a new experience and can improve as well.
You can overcome the effects of trauma, but in order to do that, you have to know what your triggers are, right? What reminds you of the traumatic events, and you've got to learn the skills to help you feel safe and help you connect with people again.
I feel like I've gone through my own type of situations. Like I was hit as a child, but for me, it was like a lesson learned. Like it makes me know, like I wouldn't want to be at a spot, like a place where I have to beat the hell out of my kid just because it's for me, like it shows me the things not to do.
I think they did abuse me, but they didn't realize because they were uneducated. And they didn't know that they abused. Mentally, I'm talking about. So I don't blame them. I still love them. That's all.
My hope for this documentary is to reach more people like me and to help them way more than what I'm just doing, like telling people my story and hopefully getting more people to just say, you know, stop and realize what the steps you can take to get out of it, what you can do to help yourself.